Welcome back to The Mentally Fit Athlete. I am your co host, Dr. Jason Von Steets, and with me, as always, is Lydia Garcia. Lydia, how you doing?
Hi, Jason. My name is Lidia Garcia. I'm an associate clinical social worker, and I'm excited to be here with you today.
Awesome. And today we have an interesting topic. So, as you were pointing out earlier, um, it's getting to the summer, and if you're a high school athlete, if you're a senior high school athlete. It's getting to that time. You could be transitioning to being a college athlete or a recreational athlete, or you could be hanging up your cleats. If you're a college athlete, the same thing. You could be looking for jobs or focusing on other things. And, for those who want to keep competing, hopefully they're competing, they're training in something. But for many people, this is a time of transitioning out of sport. Um,
Mm.
so that's what we're going to talk about today. But Lydia, how did this come up?
Yeah, I just think about, well, like you're saying, the end of the academic school year is a time when athletes start to think about what those next steps are. So if they're a senior in their high school or college and they don't know, or they are not continuing on either at a collegiate level or maybe a professional type level, for most sports, this kind of marks that end. And often it's the end of what might have been 20 years of doing something. There
Yeah.
are kids out there who might have specialized in a sport since the time they were very, very young. Um, and so to get to this point where you are no longer defined by that thing, it can be a really difficult transition for a person. Pretty complicated transition as well.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I remember. Well, I have heard that transitioning out of sport can feel devastating, depending on the person. It can feel like losing a loved one. Um, it can feel like just an important part of life is ending, which it could be. For many people it is. Um, I remember hearing an example from somebody who played football for USC. I can't quite. I heard this on a podcast a
Mhm.
long time ago, and he was saying, he thought everything was fine. He thought he was ready and didn't care, and then one day he was just out somewhere, and then the place that he was playing a college football game, and he saw that, and then all of a sudden it hit him, and he just started sobbing right there out in public,
Mhm.
and he was just
Mhm.
really surprised because he thought that he was completely fine. But that can be normal because you know people put years and years of hard work and dedication into their sport, and then it ends, and then what do you do about that?
Yeah, and it can feel that it ends abruptly, and sometimes it does. If we think about, an athlete who might have experienced a sort of career-ending injury, maybe that is an abrupt finish, and there could be not only grief but maybe anger around
Sure.
what could have been for that athlete in their career. And sometimes even those injuries, maybe they're not career ending, but maybe they take out a significant portion of the season or the
Mm,
rest of the season for someone. So it doesn't have to be the end of a school year, but maybe it's sophomore year, something happens and an athlete needs a surgery that's not going to put them back on the field until the following year. um, that that can also really impact a person's sense of self-worth, um, and an overall sense of purpose or joy.
right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And um, someone can, but usually athletes have lots of goals. Um, and you can even say dreams. They're really aspiring for something, and it could be um, to beat their town rival, and then an injury that puts them out of action for 1 week. That can force them to miss that game, and then now the thing that they've been working towards and visualizing is it's over. It's not going to happen, and then they need to they need space to grieve that, and form they just kind of come to terms with that, because that fantasy that they had of beating their rival is over, and that can just take some time. And there's lots of goals like that a 1 week injury can end, or if it ends their entire season, then that's just even more for that athlete to deal with.
Yeah, and sometimes I don't think that having pieces of identity kind of tied into a person's goals or their athletic pursuits is necessarily a bad thing, because that's what helps us as athletes really take the thing seriously, is if we feel like it's maybe part of us, we feel like
Sure.
it's important and purposeful for us. um, so I don't want anyone listening to think that we're saying don't have an athletic identity, or that
Sure.
it's super
Yeah.
devastating and dangerous to do that.
Yeah.
But when sport becomes the central and maybe only identity that a person has, that's when it gets a little bit trickier. So maybe we can go into a little bit of like the strategies for successful transition from sport, or things that are maybe protective factors for
Sure.
athletes who aren't expecting to transition if they experienced an injury, temporary or permanent.
Yeah, yeah, and I think you've already kind of hit one of the nails on the head. It's really important to have other other aspects of your identity. When I was at Whittier College, I was part of the concussion committee, and I would work with athletes who I would meet with them after they were concussed. And one of the questions that I would ask was just on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you identify with your sport? If it's football, how much do you identify as a football player, or whatever the sport is? And the basic idea is that if they say, oh, 10, football
Mhm.
is my life, I can't live with it, I'm a football player. Um, I'm not saying that that's bad, but it's going to be really hard for them to take 2 weeks off because of a concussion and give themselves the rest and the
Mhm.
time that they need to heal, so that they don't do any more damage than would be necessary.
Yeah, and we see that a lot in sports, don't we? Like whether it's, something that you can't see, right? So if like oh, I've got a calf strain, or oh, this person has, something that should, if you gave it a little bit of time to heal, then you're totally back and it's fine. But if you push it, you're going to make it worse, and then you're going to be out for longer. We see that a lot in when identity is really tied in to that athletic, uh, maybe to their athletic identity, right? Where like a
Sure,
person's
sure.
self-worth is tied in so tightly to it, they can't let it go even for a week, to their own, like, what is the word? What is my phrase?
To their own
Like
detriment.
to their own detriment. There we go. To their own detriment.
Yeah.
They're taking themselves out for
Mhm.
longer. Um, where like if they had a little bit more balance between the athletic identity and other aspects of life, themselves as students, themselves as, you know, friends, themselves as, other hobbies, writer, whatever they're going to be
Right.
doing, um, it would give them that space to actually heal and maybe pursue the sport for a longer amount of time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did meet with some football players or some athletes from various sports who would say, "Oh, maybe a 3 or a 1 or a 5 or whatever," and they would say, "I love playing football. I love playing this sport. Whatever sport they played, but." I care about my health and I want to make sure I recover. And, I'm not just a football player. I'm not just a whatever. And oftentimes they would say, "Oh, I saw the movie Concussion, and I want to take this really seriously." And I've never
Oh.
seen the movie, but I did hear that it's not necessarily all that accurate as far as how concussions work and what happens to people. But nevertheless, it improved awareness of a problem, the problem of concussions, and now athletes are being more careful and getting the rest that they need. So that is, I think, a net positive there. And
Mhm.
when I think
That
about
is
my own experience, I think I remember how frustrating and depressing it was to have to miss a competition or two. Looking back right now, if if I missed a competition or two, not a big deal, and unless it was like the finals for of whatever, or like the big competition that I was training for all year. And even then, you know what, probably better to not have lifelong injuries or lifelong issues. um, is that one medal around your neck really worth issues for the rest of your life? Now, as an old man, as a 40-year-old, I think, yeah, just forget about it. Just take care of yourself.
just take
But
the day off. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
But,
exactly.
maybe, I mean, as a young person, there's also the social aspect to
Mm,
it.
right,
So, you know, if there aren't other interests or skills or other things that a person is able to do, or the perspective even, then the missing out of not being there at practice, the missing out on that
right,
competition, the missing out on that bus ride to get there or whatever else feels like a person is losing hold of their social group as well.
right. Absolutely. Yeah, that was a big issue with the athletes that I would meet with who were concussed, and then also just any dealing with any injury or anything. Their main support systems were often the team. Their roommates were teammates, oftentimes. Um, the way that they spent their whole day was going to practice, going to strength and conditioning with the team, watching film, just whatever it is, but it was all with the team. And then when an athlete was concussed, that was taken away from them. And, for good reason.
Mhm.
They need to, sometimes they were sensitive to loud sounds or bright lights. So that made it harder to be on the sidelines. And with certain creative ideas, they could participate to a degree without harming themselves, and just get a sense of being a part of the team still.
Mhm.
Uh, but when their entire identity and their entire support system and everything was just wrapped up in their sport, it's really hard for them to take it easy for a couple weeks. And that's when it's really helpful to have other aspects of your identity, like brother, son, um, student, or
Mhm.
person who enjoys, watching movies or whatever. So
Mhm.
it really helps to have those other, yeah, the other outlets.
Yeah, I'd agree. I'd agree. So it's you know, diversifying those support networks,
Yeah.
diversifying interests, and really, as an athlete, uh helping yourself to view your identity, to view yourself as a more rounded person, a
Right.
multifaceted person versus someone who's only uh defined by one aspect of self. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And we started by talking about, you know, uh, the semester, the spring semester ending for many student athletes, and it really does help to remember that they're more than just athletes. Well, first they're student athletes,
Yes.
so it's important. You got to get all your assignments in. You got to get your paperwork in so you can graduate. You gotta you got to be looking for jobs. Um, I remember one time speaking to a class. Um, get into the spring, maybe this time of year, maybe Aprilish, and then I because I knew it was on everybody's mind. I asked who's who's looking for jobs right now, or who's looking for internships or whatever. Then very few people raised their hands, and then I asked who's dealing with graduation by not thinking about it and putting off to the last minute and then panicking, and then basically
All of them. Yeah.
everybody raised their hand at that point. So this is well, there's other things to take care of, like looking for a job and a place to live if you're a student athlete right now and you're transitioning out. But then also, there is that I think it's important to keep in mind that sport isn't the most important thing in life, but it still is important. And your identity as an athlete doesn't need to just kind of die on the vine. There are
Mhm.
recreational sports. There are ways to continue um, training and competing, and then maybe you just want to be an active person who lives a healthy lifestyle, and that's really important for
Mhm.
athletes too, for former
Yeah, and
athletes.
it evolves as you evolve, you know. Maybe there isn't as much of a if you're in a team sport, there are rec leagues, but maybe it's hard to find that rec league
Sure.
too. So maybe there's other aspects of sport that are interesting. I've seen people, transition to other individual sports or things they can do kind of in groups. Things like I'm thinking about high rocks right now in my mind, but there's
What's that?
high rocks.
Yeah.
I'll have to have you Google that later.
Okay.
um, but different things that are pretty intense and give you that competitive, um, that strong feeling of competition, uh, but might not be reliant on stick and ball kind of like group,
Sure.
pulling everybody together, making sure that everyone's available all at the same time. And I think something that is like a bright side of being an athlete that a person can take with them is that it doesn't actually end, like in the sense that um, the lessons that a person might experience
Sure.
as an athlete, the leadership skills, the teamwork dynamics, the communication, the resilience, the patience, the ability to really stick to one thing and focus on it for a period of time. Those are all skills that can translate back to maybe a job or building a career in another way, back to school, back to all of these different aspects of life that are really valuable. Um, so seeing the identity maybe transform from team captain into, leader at work, you know, those things are those things can still translate and communicate between each other.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're training a sport, if you're learning how to be good at something, if you're learning how to push yourself and test your own limits, then that's going to translate into learning to do that in job, in your education,
Yeah.
in your personal life in various ways. So there's tons and tons of great transferable skills. Um, and there are other ways to keep competing, if even if you don't or training and enjoying yourself in sport, even if you're leaving behind the sport that you've trained in for years and you really loved.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
I've enjoyed having this conversation and thinking about these ways that um, athletes might identify and how they might transition or transform their athletic experience.
you
And, if listeners out there want to dive into one aspect of this a little bit deeper, I think we should in a future episode.
sure. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, there's so much to talk about as far as transitioning out of sport. So we can definitely just keep breaking it down in the future. Um, and then yeah, there's There's so much to talk about in general. So we'll keep doing this. We'll keep having fun and keep just hopefully giving people something to listen to and enjoy and keep learning. And Lydia, this
Yeah.
was great. Where can people find you?
Oh, you can find me online at lydiagarcia.net and on socials at liddy.g. How about you, Jason? Where can folks find you?
Yeah. You can look at my website, drjasonvonsteets.com. And then I'm on Instagram and Blue Sky. And my handle is at CBT Sports Psych. So you can look me up there. And yeah, this is great. We'll have to do this again sometime very soon.
Thanks so much.